Hello YouTube, it's Merritt again. I've modified a lot more parts than I had originally planned on, but here's kind of an overview of everything I've done so far and stuff I still need to continue working on. So I've finally cemented the thrusters together, tweaked the rail system here. So instead of having two prongs going through, I've used a single one, which allowed me to be a lot more stable with this piece. So is attached to the walls here, and now I can just make sure I got the right one. Slide that like so. I actually need to add a little bit of plot plate there to the back, but I think that's all the major blockouts. Just need to do shaping and detail work, maybe some other minor detail elements, but for the most part I think this will work out pretty well. I've left some joints there so I can do some possible attachments in the future, or just put an ornamental part there. We'll see. But this whole system now rotates on the original gimbal, as well as a ball joint right there, if you can see. Allows me some more lateral, more unique movements. So that should give you some cool poses. My only concern is that these might be a little too wide. So if I do any modifications, it might be to take a few millimeters from this bridge here to bring it a little bit closer. I just have to see how it interacts with the rest of the torso and the arms, and what I eventually plan to do with the Gatling gun, because it might be a little bit in the way, so I'll have to be a little bit creative when figuring out a mounting solution for that. It could also possibly mount to the hip there as well. That could be interesting. Maybe have the arm attached here, but the resting point attached here when it's not in use. Yeah, all this stuff just needs some putty work and some shaping and detail, but I figured I'd get everything to more of a functional blocking stage and then worry about the detail later. So that's why I decided to kind of just make sure that this was all functional and working, and move on to the rest of everything else I was going to work on. So for this guy, I decided in the last video, or actually in the previous segment, I might slap that on the end of this, so if you're seeing this first, you'll see some of the details about it later. But I decided to scratch build a new cockpit. Still have some gluing to do, a little bit of trimming here just to make this flush, and a little bit of sanding to do. But this should be interesting. One of the other parts I've worked on recently is, after finishing the extension on the side skirt armor, I carved out a window there. A little bit more difficult than I thought, but some detail, exposed detail, will be poking through there, as well as I'm going to carve another channel here to put in a small thruster bell there, kind of going out at an angle. That shouldn't be too difficult, as well as putting the peg on here that'll attach to the rest of the skirt. Which brings me to another small modification recently. So I've got the faceplate here, and I wanted to extend the height of this a bit to reach the height of this whole unit here. So before, there was a little bit of stair stepping I wanted to get rid of. And because of the way that these elements, the thruster and the detail here, slide in from the back, I didn't really have a good way to utilize this peg to attach the front to the hip. So I decided to carve out an element here. So I'll probably use some sort of peg or sliding block element that goes into here, so that I can attach the front. It doesn't have to be too too strong, just enough to hold it in place and keep the ball joint on the front skirt armor in place once I attach the ball joint. Now, one of the bigger things I've done this week, in addition to modifying the elbow joints here, let's talk about that first. Let's get that off. Widened it a little bit to match the gap I've carved out with the upper arm, just making a more solid connection, as well as making bridging the gap on this guy as well, so they're about the same size. The only thing I want to do is where this little notch is there, I'm going to extend some detail past that, and then maybe on the back here as well, so that when the elbow bends, for the most part, this poly gap will be hidden. Now, one of the more major modifications, I've added a few millimeters of plow plate on the back. Here you can see color difference. Sanded that flat, added some of the bevels for the silhouette. And I've added I think about a millimeter plow plate on either side to widen it a little bit and to accommodate any detail I want to carve into the side, because the walls were super thin. They were getting a little translucent, so I was going to end up cutting right through those. But this one's a little bit later stage. Yeah, there we go. So I've begun to bevel this side here and more correctly in the front here. So this is more or less what it'll look like. Probably a little bit more beveling on the side here to go. But this is where this is going to attach to. Although I do not like these designs, they're a little strange looking. So I'm going to keep a triangular element, probably a rebuild one, and that'll be recessed in this bevel here, and it'll go over a square. It'll be really simple, square shaped, a little bit larger cannon there. So it'll look somewhat like this when it's finished. I think I'll be a lot happier with that, as well as some beefier arms. But yeah, I've got a lot more sanding and bevel work to do on this guy, as well as finish this guy. Another element that I don't think is going to be too difficult to pull off is there's some additional elements in the concept that I liked for this redesign. And there are some thrusters built into the sides here. So on this guy I've removed this housing here, and that will house some small thrusters, and I'll still be able to use these elements here. I'll just have to raise it up a few millimeters, I think, to match the top, if that's what I want to do. And I may, either just through panel scribing or some additional plates, might make this a little bit more similar to the RX-78-2 with the lateral split in the side there. I may add some plow plate because when I sanded these, like the forearms, they were bulged, and to get that more planar and flat, I sanded it quite a bit, and in that process I've thinned it quite a bit. So I'm a little worried that when I do panel scribe it, I'm just going to write through to the other side. It's going to be a lot more trouble than it's worth than adding a little bit more plow plate and just sanding it to back to the original shape. That shouldn't be too difficult. The other thing I wanted to do is, the other element here is to utilize these hinges here and add some armor coming off of here, a little bit larger and square shaped. Possibly with thrusters, I'm not sure yet, but I think that'll give it a unique look. I think that's just about everything for this week. I haven't touched the legs really. I wanted to make sure to focus on kind of getting the backpack to a more refined stage, making sure that all the crotch and skirt armor was a little bit farther along. as well as finish some of the major modifications to the arms. I don't want to spread myself too thin. I've already kind of done that already with keeping being distracted by continually modifying other elements, but I think I'm keeping up with a decent pace. More refined shape for these thrusters and its attachments figured out, as well as if there's going to be any lateral movement or not, as well as figuring out the rest of the bulk for the Gatling gun and its mechanics. For right now, I don't think I'm going to be modifying the head too much. I mean, I might extend it a little bit, but I don't think there's anything major that I can think of for the moment. Oh, the other last major element is going to be modifying the shield. I don't think I'm going to modify the shape quite that much. There's just going to be some add-ons, some breakups, as well as adding some sort of beam cannon weaponry to the shield. Oh, I guess lastly the other element would be, this was my originally really quick mocked up rifle where I was mostly kit bashing, but I think I'm gonna salvage some of this beam weapon, but I think I'm gonna do a totally rebuilt cannon here, extend it. Maybe make it look more like the RX-78-4, because maybe this is a combo of parts from the 4 and the 5 together, which could be interesting. I'll go over my ideas for the lore a little bit later, but that could be an interesting element. And I think because there's not going to be weapons on the shield, I'll probably need this peg and maybe make some sort of attachment for the gun here. And that way it can be stored on the hip, because there's going to be a lot of it going on the other side too. You could jettison this weapon and reach to the side and grab the beam weapon from the other hand. So that's pretty much everything for this week. If I didn't put the other footage at the beginning, you'll see a little bit more detail of the build process on the chest here, some of the side skirt armor, and a couple of maybe a few other time-lapse stuff. But I'll see you guys later. So I've been working on the cockpit hatch here on the chest, and I think it's a good opportunity to illustrate the fact that sometimes it might just be easier to scratch build the entire part instead of attempting to take an existing part and forcing it into what you want it to do. When I think you run into too many problems, instead of brute forcing your way through, just think what would be the most efficient and easiest way to get the best result. And I think scratch building a new cockpit would be the easiest way to go about this. So, a few of the things I had to do, I had to sand out the bottom of the cavity here a little bit to form a parallel line with the interior edge of the cockpit here. I will have to fill in these gaps. Plot plate, I already have the pieces cut out, I just need to glue it. So to make sure I got the right shape, I cut out the right profile with the right part to accommodate the pegs here and this rail here. So these will fit in like so. And this gave me the much closer to the silhouette I was wanting for a more protruded chest here, as well as a decent lining up with the way the crouch armor connects to the bottom there. So I have two parts here for either side cut out, and I just have to glue in the top, front, and bottom. And then I wanted to leave the back open. I don't really plan on this rotating at all. I mean, it probably could, but more importantly, I wanted to have any of the interior hatches a different color, so those will slide in through the back. I think to secure it in place, I'll just put a tiny plot plate somewhere along the length here to stop that piece from basically coming out the front. So So I'll have one there and then one up on the top hidden. So instead of trying to do both at the same time, I'm going to put all the interior edges alongside one of these pieces, figure out the mechanics for the internal parts, make sure that's working, and then once that's done, then the other side will be glued to the walls, forming the entire piece. So here, I'm just making sure that I'm retaining the 90-degree edge on this because it'll be important when I glue the other part on. I want to make sure there's a 90-degree bridge.